And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan, and this is your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook for Wednesday, December 3rd, 2025. And setting things up as of this Wednesday morning, we have still winter weather advisories for snow up across the central, east central interior through at least late this Wednesday afternoon. Also winter weather advisories parts of the Kenai Peninsula for some light freezing rain, freezing drizzle, and back toward the south and west along Kuskokwim Bay. There still could be a little bit of light mix of precipitation through this Wednesday afternoon, but the storm system, the front driving the adverse weather the past couple of days, is finally beginning to break down. The circulation that was supporting the snow and icy mixed precipitation is breaking down and will be weakening by Thursday morning. The frontal boundary sags further south down into south central areas of the mainland. And then we are going to be focusing on what's coming up this weekend, because a couple areas of low pressure are going to move up into the Gulf, and then you're going to have this low circulation over the Gulf this weekend into next week, with pieces of low pressure energy rotating around that, pulling in moisture. There is the potential, just as a heads up, this weekend into early next week for a prolonged, heavier snow event along the northeastern Gulf Coast, including Yakutat on into the northern Panhandle along the Icy Strait corridor into Juneau, and certainly further up the line from Haines and Skagway. So keep that in mind. Meanwhile, and I'm just setting this all up because we have high pressure that's going to be over the north, up in the Arctic Ocean, trying to build here into northwest Canada, out toward eastern Siberia. That is going to cause, with the low pressure circulation hanging in place here over the Gulf this weekend into next week, strong east-northeast winds are going to be coming across the mainland interior, bitterly cold winds with air temperatures below zero and wind chills well below zero. So even though you may see some clearer skies developing, it's going to turn very cold. So keep that in mind. So as of Thursday morning, we expect IFR conditions still along and south of this sagging frontal boundary. Low pressure that's situated just south of the Aleutians is eventually going to join up with another piece of energy coming up from the North Pacific into the Gulf. And that's what's going to set the stage for the weekend snow event here along the northeastern Gulf Coast and Panhandle. But for Thursday morning, expect IFR across much of the Panhandle, Copper River Basin and Talkeetna Mountains, back out along the west arm of the Alaska Range and up into the southwest interior, just inland there from Bristol Bay, like Wood-Tikchik State Park area, IFR, as well as along much of the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians. For Thursday afternoon, we find, yes, we have IFR conditions continuing south of the Alaska Range in the Talkeetna Mountains and down through the Copper River Basin, Wrangell-St. Elias Mountains into the northern Panhandle. We also find IFR conditions along south and east side of the Kodiak Island into the Alaska Peninsula, back through the eastern Aleutians. And then we have some IFR conditions emerging here along the Chukchi Sea coast between the Lisburn Peninsula and Utqiagvik. This is actually as a result of push of colder air that's going to be diving southward. And as we look at Friday morning, we find IFR conditions along the eastern half of the Beaufort Sea. We find them along the Copper River Basin, Prince William Sound, eastward along the northern Gulf Coast into the northern Panhandle, and back out toward the far western Aleutians. But here comes that push of moisture just beginning to show up here on Friday afternoon. We'll find low pressure trying to eventually work its way into the western Gulf for the weekend. And so with the circulation and moisture influx coming in here along the Gulf Coast, we expect the IFR conditions to begin to expand. And we'll start to see that along the northeastern Gulf Coast, the northern third of the Panhandle. We have IFR conditions lingering along the spine of the Brooks Range, North Slope, and eastern Beaufort Sea. And then out here to the west, there is a front that is producing IFR conditions in through especially the central Aleutians. So on Thursday, pass conditions up there in the east central Brooks Range, Anaktuvik Pass VFR, Adigan Pass generally VFR conditions. And then for Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR conditions should become VFR. We're going to get some colder, drier air begin to filter in from the north and northeast. Same thing there, rainy pass, IFR in the morning becoming VFR. Windy pass should generally be able to hold on to VFR conditions. Further east, Isabel may start out with MVFR conditions becoming VFR. Further south, though, of Isabel Pass can hang on to some IFR conditions in the Copper River Basin. Mentasta Pass will likely remain IFR during the day Thursday, and certainly as you fly south into the Copper River Basin. Tanita Pass, IFR there, and further south, IFR conditions are expected along much of the length of Portage Pass, maybe MVFR as you get out toward the east entrance toward Prince William Sound. And then finally in the far northern panhandle, you're looking at IFR conditions on Thursday at both Chilkoot and White. So looking at the freezing levels, the surface freezing line runs through the central Bering up along Bristol Bay coast, cutting across Lower Cook Inlet along the outer area of the Kenai Peninsula, northern Gulf Coast into the inner channels of the Panhandle. We do see freezing levels aloft bump upward as we go southeast of the Gulf, 4,000 feet up into around Sitka, Port Alexander, and 6,000 feet plus as you get across Haida Gwaii, and then 8,000 and 10,000 feet further north into the Pacific off of Vancouver Island and Washington State. Back to the west, the front that's out just west of the Aleutians, you find freezing levels rising upwards of 2,000, 4,000, 6,000 feet. Now, where there is some lingering precipitation, remember we've had this weak, this frontal boundary lost its dynamic support for that precipitation band that we saw, especially on Tuesday, across the interior from the southwest coast all the way up toward the Alcan border. That's going to sag southward and weaken a bit, but any remnant precipitation could be some icing above 3,000 feet, 5,000 feet as you get down there toward the Panhandle as a result of the freezing levels aloft being a little higher. We also find out near and south of the Alaska Peninsula there could be some moderate icing above 5,000 feet. And then as we go further west to the front that's way out toward the western Aleutians, maybe above about 5,000, 6,000 feet there, as a little push of warmer air aloft tries to nudge up along the western and central Aleutians. Jet stream level winds strongest. We have an anticyclonically curved jet core that comes in out of the North Pacific, clips the southeast corner of the Gulf across Haida Gwaii into British Columbia, 150, 155 knots. Back behind me, there is a southwesterly jet core at 30,000 feet of 135 to 150 knots along the Kamchatka Peninsula. And as we bring things down to 9,000 feet or 700 millibars, you can see we have high pressure circulation here over the northern Bering and a low way out to the west with 180 to 110 knot winds there up into East Asia. And then for the northwest quadrant of the mainland, north-northwest winds 40 knots, and then across the Gulf, west-northwest winds 35 to 45 knots into the Panhandle. But bringing it down further, the main area of wind is going to be a few places, is out to the west, way to the west there along the Kamchatka Peninsula, 80 to 90 knot south winds. But more importantly, with the high pressure that's building to the north into northwest Canada, with the low pressure that's going to be slipping into the Gulf for the weekend, we're going to see east-northeast winds really start to increase across the interior mainland, working its way from northeast to southwest down through the lower Yukon and Kuskokwim regions, and some of the stronger offshore winds are going to be right here along the southwest coast, and it's just getting started on Thursday. It'll be more notable Friday and certainly through the weekend, and this cold pattern, windy pattern with very cold wind chills will be the rule here as we go through late weekend and next week. So here is where turbulence may be an issue for Thursday. Right there along the Atollin Strait, just coming off of the YK Delta, Nunavik Island, extending out toward the Pribilovs at St. Paul, St. George, and then out through the eastern and central Aleutians primarily, but within these regions there could be some moderate turbulence. Surface to 3,000 feet on Thursday.